I need to kick off this review with a little bit of a preamble, so please bear with me for the first 45 seconds. Firegirl Hack and Splash Rescue is a prime example of where a little bit of playtesting would go an awful long way before releasing a game. And what I mean by this is that Firegirl Hack and Splash Rescue came out last week. I was given an advance copy of the game for review, which is absolutely fantastic, and thank you very much. But I really was struggling with this game, and people that I talked to about this game were all saying the same thing. But so did everyone else when it launched last week. And so a swathe of negative press came in, and what's been really interesting is that over the course of a week I've had to scrap 3 reviews because every 2 to 3 days a new update comes out that fixes loads and loads of issues that could have been identified a few weeks earlier with probably less stress to the developer if they'd have only done some more diverse playtesting before launch. It's a really interesting look at how getting in other eyes earlier in the process could have helped Firegirl save face, because at the moment it's sitting there on a 47% review positivity on Steam, and I think it's probably left a lot of bitter tastes in a lot of people's mouths. So what is Firegirl Hack and Splash, and why am I now doing this review 1 week in? Well, firstly, because I feel like it's fixed quite a lot of the issues that I had beforehand, and I feel like I now understand where this game is probably going to be developing and heading, and I can now make an informed review on it. Firegirl takes a 2D pixel art which looks absolutely gorgeous, with fantastic fire effects, lots of layered parallax effects and all kinds of stuff to make it look vibrant and funky and fun, and places it into procedurally generated worlds where you are firefighting against a fire demon. This fire demon is starting fires in buildings, apartment buildings, trains, forests. There's 4 different key areas that you can dive into, but every level will be randomly generated as you go. Inside each level there will always be at least one survivor that you need to rescue, and then you need to be able to get to an exit, and you need to do that within the 3-minute time limit. At least that's the time that you start off with in every level, before the building collapses basically at the end of that 3-minute mark. However, there are 2 other things that you need to think about. Firstly is your health. If you touch any flame or fire enemies, or if you fall too far, you will lose health. If you fall out of a building, especially if you're on a high rise, it will be game over instantly, and particularly on the train sections, because the carriages disconnect and you need to be leaping from one to another. You fall off the trains and onto the tracks, it's end of that level for you and your run ends. The other thing that you need to think about is water. A, have you got any? And B, what's the water pressure that you've got? And this constantly can be replenished with water canisters that you can pick up dotted around the levels here and there, and you can later on start unlocking power-ups that allow you to convert moisture in the air into water that you can use for your hoses, and that's very helpful. But this game is extremely hardcore in the way how water is used and the way how it's used for traversal. This isn't just for putting out fire and fire enemies, and you do that by waving up and down the right analog stick as you kind of wave the hose back and forth, and it will spray out the water and kind of capture and kill some of the enemies as you go around. But you'll also be using your fire hose for propulsion, because your jump is a very basic jump. Now, there's 2 things to do with this that really make me kind of go, ah, and it still makes me go, ah, now, although it's slowly being refined and a little bit more steady over time. And this is that it's very difficult to get bang on exactly what the momentum propulsion behind this is. So you need to basically turn on your hose as you're jumping up. Don't do it as you hit the peak of your jump, because then the hose doesn't really do very much for you. It's as if it's multiplying the momentum that you're doing at the beginning of your jump by 3 or 4 if you hit it early on. But if you've already used a lot of water and you've not got much water pressure in your hose, you'll just get a little dribble and nothing will really work. And there's some real issues around this. Quite often, having a lack of water and needing it for traversal can put you in unwinnable situations over and over and over again. And so it's better to just walk off a ledge or just get yourself killed by fire to end the level and the run so that you respawn and get back going again. There's also problems where sometimes, because of the way how you're using jump and the hose and moving about everywhere, that actually where you point the stick isn't necessarily where the hose goes, and so a jump ends up being like a spray water to the left or right, and it's really finicky, and it's still finicky 1 week on. I'm also running into new bugs as well, where I will go to do the jump or I will go to hose down fire and nothing comes out, but the animation is still working, but the enemies aren't dying. So it means that quite often it's a glitch that kills you or causes you health and harm problems, just as much as actually the game being hardcore itself, and that really needs to be sorted quite quickly. The levels themselves are also procedurally generated but with problems, and this is because quite often, because you can't, you can jump and then hose downwards and try and kill stuff, but it's really, again, a bit woolly, and where this game expects precision because it's a hardcore roguelite, it doesn't offer you that with this propulsion and blowing yourself around with your water hose, because quite often it will make you drop into pits of fire and you can't necessarily control precisely where you land very well, and if you do, you use up so much water that then means that you end up in an unwinnable situation later on. Levels are also really weirdly designed in a way that means that you're quite often going backwards and forth and round and round and round, and it will offer you exits before you get to where you need to go to, almost like a cheap option out. But if you then go past that exit is then blocked by surges of fire that will blast out through you, and they're notified by a little flaming icon like a little sign on the door. I also run into some other technical issues where these fires, particularly ones that blast through a door, get stuck on my character because they trigger too early where you've not moved away from the door, and then you all get stuck together, and I've got footage of literally minutes of me just stuck in fire pixel art images where I can't actually move or do anything with the game, and that's very frustrating. So I feel like I've been quite moany about this game, but there is something genuinely good here. It just needs playtesting and refinement. The actual fighting the fire feels rewarding when it all goes to plan. The more fire that you put out, every time you kill an enemy, you get given a second or 2 seconds onto your clock, which means that you can go and explore a bit more. Obviously, you still need to balance that against whether or not you've got enough health or water to do that. But when you complete a mission, whether you do it successfully or not, you get money from the council for putting out the fire. You might get money from fans if you rescue all of the survivors. You might also get some reduced infirmary bills if you end up losing and then having to go to hospital. And all of these money that you collect then goes into your firehouse, and you can recruit in volunteers who can then help you out. They can reduce down your hospital debt. You can improve your fire hose capacity and pressure. You can also then start to get extra equipment, which gives you a shield for getting hit by fire, and more health points as you go along. You can also increase like the radius of where your fire hose can spray, which is good as well. And you can even recruit a little pet dog that you can just stroke. The whole game itself has this kind of underlying plot that is not necessarily tied to whether or not you're successful in what you do in this game. It's tied towards number of fans that you get as you rescue humans or animals as you go along, but also these fire tomes that you collect, because what you're trying to do is collect 13 fire tomes so that you can stop this kind of demon coming and respawning itself. And so that's quite good that you can actually still keep going and start to see drips and drabs of the story, just at a much slower pace if you keep dying over and over. And you will die over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, because this game is a hardcore game that doesn't give you the precision a hardcore game provides. And whilst that does provide an interesting challenge, it ultimately makes it quite frustrating at the same time. Once this gets rebalanced, I think perhaps maybe in 6 months' time, this game could be absolutely superb and a real indie darling, but this is going to have a rough ride for a good couple of months whilst this all gets sorted out. What's really refreshing though is that in the first week we've already had 3 chunky updates. One of them solved one of the biggest issues that we had, which was basically whenever you doused some fire, there was a really long fire animation, which basically meant that when you couldn't complete levels very quickly because you spent so long waiting for the fire animation to end that you were losing 5 seconds and getting given like 1 second back in time. So it was making you just think, well, I'll just kind of try and only put out some of the fire where I desperately need to, and that's not really satisfying or fun either. There's loads of other issues that have been resolved over this first week as well. Some were control related, some were graphic glitch related, some were level generation issues, which there still are some, but they're much less prominent than what they used to be. This game is clearly going in the right direction. Can I absolutely recommend it at the moment after week 1 of release? I'm not sure. There is definitely an itch that this game scratches, and I think it will be fun in the future so long as the developer continues listening to this feedback and refines what this game has to offer. And I think this could turn from a negative release into a very positive one. Here's hoping. I will definitely come back and circle round to a video on this game at a later date, but for now this is a very tentative recommendation for people who love roguelites, platformers that are challenging but don't necessarily give you all the tools to complete it. And if you've still got just that, I came at this game really from I want a firefighting game, and this does do that really well. I just wished it was a little bit more dynamic, so to speak. A written review will be over on highplanegames.com at the end of today. Any questions about the game, please leave them down below and I'll always get back to you. Take care, bye bye. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/Higher Network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.